Oh damn, not those dandelion pictures again. Well, it does not have to feel like that when we look at our pictures, right? Hello everybody, it's Haj here. We were on holidays and I spent lots of time taking photos of landscapes and flowers. However, once I imported the photos, my motivation to go out and take pictures went down drastically. Do not get me wrong, I enjoyed the hiking and the beautiful scenery, but I felt like I'm taking the same pictures over and over again. How many pictures of mountains, grass, and dandelions do I need? So I was browsing my favorite images looking for inspiration, and I come across these pictures I took in Madagascar 10 years ago, which made me think about blur effect. And the idea actually motivated me to go out again and take more pictures. So what is creative blur effect? How is it different from, let's say, a random accidental blurry photo from wrong camera setting and techniques like these pictures of landing ducks, for example? Well, as its name implies, it's a blur effect created then purposefully by manipulating the camera settings, and the lens in order to achieve a desired look or to convey a message or information. For example, these two photos of cars, both cars are moving, but this one looks like parked and this one is clearly speeding up and breaking the speed limit. This photo is nothing more than a picture of a nice view from the veranda, but by adding a zoom blur effect in it, I can still hear the bell ringing, waking me up every morning at 6 o'clock. The great thing about creative blur is that it can turn a boring scene into an interesting one, and it can be also achieved even with the cheapest camera and lens kit out there, as long as you can control the camera manually. Also, two of the blur effects I will talk about in these videos even require zoom lens and cannot be done with those heavy, expensive, fast frame lenses. The last recommended but not necessary tool is a tripod. It might sound controversial to use a tripod to get a blurry shot, but believe me, it will make some of the techniques easier. The main ingredient of creative blur is slow shutter speed. Remember, we have been taught to use faster shutter speed to freeze action. But in this case, we want to do the opposite. We want to drag the shutter in order to create a blur effect. However, in order to maintain then a proper exposure, the use of slow shutter speed requires low ISO or small aperture or even both. And if the desired shutter speed is not slow enough yet, and then a natural density filter is needed. In this video, I will talk about 10 types of created blur effects, and I will show then examples and give also tips on how to achieve each effect. The first most common blur effect I will talk about is the standard motion blur with the camera kept as still as possible, probably then fixed on a tripod. And then we open the shutter for a certain period of time and then just let then the moving subject in your frame do their own magic. This technique is used mostly to photograph moving clouds or water bodies such as waterfall, river, or ocean. My tip is to not become too extreme. The slowest shutter speed is not always the best. It is not a sin to increase the shutter speed if that will give you then the look that you are looking for. The next type of creative blur, and probably the second most common one, is the pan and follow. In this case, we have then a moving subject like a car, and we pan or move the camera ideally with the same speed as the subject in order to retain as much sharpness as possible on the subject, or at least on one part of the subject, but reducing then the rest of the scene into lines of motion blur. Just like the previous technique though, we need a slow enough shutter speed, and a camera support could also be helpful. My tip is to start panning before really take the pictures in order to get then a good estimation of the subject speed. Also, keep panning while pressing and releasing the shutter, and also even continue panning after the photo has been taken. The next blur effects are the horizontal, the vertical, and the diagonal blur effects. The only difference from the previous example is that in this case we do not follow a moving subject. We move the camera horizontally or vertically or diagonally to create the blur motion. And my tip here is to vary the panning speed, but also to experiment with a little stop at the beginning or at the end of the exposure. If well timed, you will have a reasonable sharp subject with a blurred trail in front or then behind it. The image will look like as if you used a flash with rear or front curtain on a moving subject. Panning down and stopping at the end, or panning up with a stop at the beginning, will make the subject like they just landed, while doing the opposite, panning down and stopping at the beginning, or panning up and stopping at the end, will render the subject like it is taking off. A diagonal pan, on the other hand, increases drama, the energy and the power of the movement. But enough of panning around. The fifth type of creative blur is the tunnel vision effect, which is achieved by twisting the camera a little bit while taking the photos. You don't need to go all the way 90 degrees or 180 degrees, but of course it depends on how much blur you want to achieve. A good camera support and a lens tripod color like this one will also make then the job easier. However, just hand holding the lens and the camera will work as well. Keep the subject on the center of the rotation as much as possible, because this effect draws the attention to that center point. If your subject is off-centered, the viewer's eye will not land on it. In addition, keep in mind that the center point will be the sharpest area in the image, and the edge will be the blurriest. The next creative blur is the time tunnel zoom effect. In this case, we need a zoom lens. Keep the camera as steady as possible and take the pictures while zooming in or zooming out. And just like the previous case, the center of the image will be the center of attention and the sharpest part of the image. This effect will look as if something is actually approaching the subject at the speed of light, or if something just burst out of the subject suddenly. Also, keep in mind that the focus point might shift while zooming in, and the depth of field is also shallower at the longer focal length. Usually, I focus at the subject at the longer focal length, then take the photo while I zoom out then. The next effect is the twist zoom effect. which is also a zoom in or zoom out effect, but this time, instead of turning the zoom ring, we hold the zoom ring still and we twist the camera instead. I find it to be very challenging to achieve pleasing result with this technique, but play with it and you will see if you like it or not. Also, it will be easier and smoother to twist the camera while keeping the center of the image still if the lens have a tripod color and fixed on a tripod. And the final effect is the bloom effect created by defocusing the lens while taking then the photos. If you defocus the lens while you take the photos, it will leave a halos around the subject and it will make then the image dreamy and softer. My final word is that creativity does not have rules, and what's important is that the effect you use convey the concept you are after. So go out there and get wild. However, do not fill up your portfolio with those images that make you dizzy unless you want to hypnotize us. Also, these effects can be faked in post-processing, right? But we do not want to fake things, right? Don't we? Anyway, that's it for this video and until next time then. Bye!